Please, you carry Sakina's bag and notebooks. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So as we formally start the meeting, I'm certain you now know the name of the person and the organizations they're representing. So that's the beginning of connecting, but also trying to move from policy to practice. We need to connect, and we need to know more in terms of who is doing what and where. So this is very important. So without further ado, and for the interest of time, allow me to invite Mark Kofi Fend, who is a policy officer from the Food and Agriculture Organization, the regional office for Africa, to come and deliver his keynote speech, which will usher us into a panel discussion. As I say, we're all going to interact and we're all going to engage, because this is a very practical session that make us all reflect collectively in terms of how do we move from policy to practice. And this is a conversation the young people will be leading, but Mark will just be a teaser for the conversation, and we start. You're most welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles. And good morning to you. It's nice to see at least some of you here, those who were able to get up early and ready to share perspectives and insights on enabling youth agripreneurship and inclusive finance. We are hoping that we will get more people so we can have a very interesting and interactive discussion, as Charles has indicated. The topic is indeed very important, and at the same time, it is also a tough nut to crack. Now, why do I say that? Because it encompasses all the known challenges associated with the business of agriculture and related services. So we add agri-finance, which is considered by some as a policy orphan because it struggles to find an institutional home. Does it belong to finance? Does it belong to agriculture? Or does it straddle the two? And how strong is the anchor that holds it in place? Now, as if that was not enough, we have also added another layer of complexity, that is inclusion, with a focus on youth. So how do we begin to crack this nut? Well, first, by acknowledging the youth as drivers of inclusive and sustainable agri-food systems. Africa's youth are increasingly engaging in agripreneurship, particularly through agri-tech startups that leverage digital tools, mobile platforms, and AI to address challenges in production, market access, and climate resilience. Policy frameworks, therefore, must recognize the youth not just as beneficiaries, but as innovators and leaders in agri-food systems. This recognition of the pivotal role of youth for agri-food systems transformation is prominent in the CAADP strategy. We've been hearing a lot about the CAADP strategy and action plan, and we note that there is a strong focus, particularly through its strategic objective 4 on youth, which talks about advancing inclusivity and equitable livelihoods. Indeed, countries such as Kenya, Rwanda, our host, Uganda, and the United Republic of Tanzania are known for their dedicated national youth in agribusiness strategies, something that is rarely observed globally. And there are, in fact, ongoing efforts at continental level to promote such initiatives by domesticating the African Union Agribusiness Youth Strategy. So we are on a good course. However, mere recognition of the role of the youth in agri-food systems transformation is not enough. Indeed, FAO analysis of youth inclusion in agri-food systems policy shows that about 83% of African countries prioritize youth as a target demographic in the agri-food policies and strategies. However, they often target youth as a homogeneous group without specific considerations on gender and other intersectional factors of vulnerability such as socioeconomic status, rural, urban, location, ethnicity, or migratory status. Therefore, these policies and related interventions must be targeted. Over the past few days here in this meeting, we have also heard about the dangers of policy fragmentation. Achieving youth-inclusive agri-food systems requires expanding economic opportunities in the broader economy while implementing targeted strategies that equip young people with the necessary skills, agency, and resources. Youth agripreneurship intersects with agriculture, education, ICT, finance, and rural development. Policies must foster collaboration across these sectors to create a holistic support system. In effect, we are talking about adopting systems thinking approaches in this manner. Let me now turn to some policy insights on financial inclusion for youth agripreneurs. The challenges are well known, so I'm not going to bore you by repeating them here. What is worthy of note, however, is that in practical terms, developing a more enabling market of financial services for youth in agribusiness requires integrated public interventions that belong to different policy domains. Again, we are avoiding the dangers of policy fragmentation that we have heard about. So these different policy domains include policies that foster agriculture and rural development, policies that promote the economic development of youth, and policies that promote financial inclusion in general. Available evidence shows that in recent years, governments have begun to integrate youth-specific objectives into national financial inclusion strategies. According to FAO analysis of youth inclusion in agri-food systems policies, 20 out of 26 national financial inclusion strategies currently in place across African countries prioritize youth as a target group, and half of them have youth-specific objectives and concrete performance indicators with special attention to rural youth and youth-led businesses. Notable examples are found in Cameroon, Malawi, Mauritania, and Uganda. Experience has shown the need for an integrated and multidimensional approach to policy and programmatic interventions to mitigate the interconnected barriers that prevent the development of a sustainable offer of financial services capable of adequately serving young people in agri-food systems. Before I conclude, let me highlight some key FAO recommendations to decision makers and relevant stakeholders in promoting youth-inclusive finance in agribusiness. It's important, one, to create an enabling environment by integrating youth rights into both national agricultural and financial policies. Secondly, we've got to tailor financial products to youth needs by developing youth-friendly financial instruments such as microloans and group lending, and promoting mobile banking and digital wallets to reach remote youth. It is also important to strengthen financial literacy and capacity. So now we are looking at the demand side for financial services, and also to support mentorship and peer learning through youth agripreneurship networks. On the supply side, it is also important to strengthen agricultural and agripreneurship literacy for financial services providers. Leverage technology and digital platforms by using digital tools for credit scoring, market access, financial management, and by supporting youth-led agri-tech startups. Promote public-private partnerships by incentivizing financial institutions to serve the youth through credit guarantees and risk sharing, or collaborating with donors and development agencies to scale youth agribusinesses. And last but not the least, ensure inclusive policy design by co-creating policies with youth input and representation. So, colleagues, what do we say in conclusion as we enable youth agripreneurship and inclusive finance? There is a lot going on. There are good things happening on the continent. So we say that scale them up. But there are also significant gaps. So again, we say fill those gaps up, fill them up. And there is a need to fine-tune the policy-making process, but don't get lost in analysis paralysis. Put the boots on the ground. A policy agenda that prioritizes strengthening youth voice, visibility, and influence in policymaking is key to sustainably transform our agri-food systems and lays the groundwork for coordinated action among relevant stakeholders, including youth-led organizations, to move from policy to practice. We are glad to see this happening today at this meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, my brother Max, for the excellent submissions, but also reminding us that the time for rhetoric and talking is over. It's time for action. It is time for us to position young people just not on the table, but at the center of leading the transformations and the conversation we want to see in transforming food system, creating job opportunities, but most importantly, creating enabling environment that make them accomplish this excellent work. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished viewers just join us, you're most welcome for a very exciting discussions which focus the movement from policy to practice, the youth-led financing innovations pathways for agri-food system transformation. This very exciting event is being organized by the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, the Consortiums of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change, CAADP, the Agricultural Policy Dialogue of African Unions, and all the representatives are here. And beyond these sessions, I urge you to meet and interact with them because they have a lot of conversations of moving this discussion beyond this beautiful place. So without further ado, as we're running out of time, allow me to once again thank Mark for the excellent submissions, but also creating a new conversations and now guiding our panelists who will be joining us on the table. With that, let's put our hands together and we welcome our panelists who will be trying to provide insight into the MAC discussion, but also on the topic of this meeting. The first among the panelists, we have Honors Rostam. Is he here already? Then we have Balix Saludin Ibrahim. Then we have Sakina Usugumana. Then last but not least, we have Rose Wangethi. Wow. 3 excellent ladies and a gentleman. What a composition of the panelists. A big applause of hand claps again for these excellent young people, for the excellent work they're doing, beyond just the conversations they're going to share with us.
Heroes with several awards. In this case, not all heroes wear glittering crowns. Not all heroes are found walking on the red carpet. There's this special type of hero. You'll find her hands dirty, bending under the scorching sun, tilling the land. Her impact transcends feeding families. She feeds the nation. Women as the most valuable player in agriculture is a crown that they wear so gracefully, despite the present limitations in today's society, such as gender-insensitive policies towards land and credit access. Women still produce 70% of Africa's food. It's time for women to be at the table, not only on the menu, giving them access to information, a platform to elevate their voices, power to make decisions, for them to take agency of the future.
Technical team, please, can someone try to remove the sound from this? Because otherwise, it's going to be a fight between me and the sounds you're running behind the background of this meeting. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds to introduce yourself to our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So I start with Rose. Just your name and excitement to be here.
Hello, good morning. My name is Rose Wangethi. I'm a member of the Consortium of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change, and I'm also the founder of Agrifood Network magazine. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here.
Excellent.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Unas Rostom. I'm a mining engineer specialized in mineral valuation. I'm from North Africa, Algeria, and I'm in charge of North Africa Kayak. We are into land augmentation and sustainability. I'm head of a startup specialized in agricultural transition and ecological transition. Thanks a lot, and thanks for this amazing opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yeah. All right, my name is Balki Salahuddin Ibrahim. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Green Republic Farms. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm a farmer by profession. However, I also work, in the process of the YAPI project that is currently ongoing to ensure that we capture youth in the Agrifood system on a strong database that can be used by policymakers, government institutions, and development partners. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Ngaramutse. Ngaramutse. Good morning, everyone. Ngaramutse meaning good morning. I hope your days here during CAADP have really helped you to pick up one word from Kinyarwanda. So my name is Sakina Usengimana. I'm the Managing Director of Agrifood Limited. We do export of fresh fruit and vegetables like avocado, chili, and passion fruit. And also I'm the chairperson of Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum. It's a forum of more than 3,000 youth across the country. And recently also have been elected to be a board member and the youth representative from the East African Farmer Federation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're most welcome. Sakina, just speaking from you, from the MAC submissions, that we need to create an enabling environment for young people to strive and make the change they want to see. And also being a host country, I'll start from you right away and from where you just ended. Looking at government, especially within the continent, and specifically probably from the government of Rwanda, how can government and development partners ensure that youth-led initiatives are integrated into the national food system strategies rather than treated as a pilot projects? Because you've just heard from Mark that we cannot continue with the rhetoric. We need to see a transformative and deliberate actions. So what is your take on that?
Thank you so much. That's a very good question. And I'm really glad that you asked it. But what I can start saying is that youth initiatives fail to scale when they are really designed as a project, not a system. And I think CAADP agenda emphasized transformation, not activity, meaning that youth must be embedded structurally, not just symbolically. Because as he said, we need to have representation of the youth in all the board meetings, steering committee, and also in designing. He mentioned about the policy design. So when you design a policy and then the youth are not involved, and then that's a problem. But here there's some of the recommendation I can give, starting from institutionalize youth in agri-governance, create a former youth seat in the national CAADP coordination and mechanism. I can also share one of example where last year we were in Addis Ababa, where we are designing as a youth from around Africa, we did call to action. Doing call to action was like, this is as youth, this is what we need. And if we present what we need, we went also to Kampala. When they were presenting, we had the youth dome. We came up with 7 call to action, but how many our government and development partners knows about what youth need? But sometimes you find they go in the boardroom, they design thinking this is what youth need, and they present to us, and sometimes maybe it's not working for us. So I think youth presentation must co-design the priorities, not only implementing them. And the second, I want also to emphasize about the youth alignment with the national value chain. If we're talking about the governance, and also should be mapping up about what's the youth in agribusiness need, what is their challenges, and when you design the program, is the program that's responding to the youth? He spoke about the access to finance. Sometimes you find the bank or financial institution, they come here, and then they give you interest rate which is high. They're asking you criteria which you cannot be able to meet, and then they're saying we're supporting youth. So again, we don't want to be as a symbolic and also numbers, targeted numbers. We don't want to be beneficiaries. We want to be actors and we want to contribute. And I think during our call to action, we're showing the development partners and the government the issues we are facing, either access to finance and resources, land, and also we are showing the capacity building. We need to really be capacitated. You cannot judge a youth by, you cannot judge a fish by not climbing a tree, because maybe you are putting them where they don't belong. But if you put in the fish in the ocean, they really swim and swim very well. So I think the development partners and also the government has to really listen to the youth and not only designing the project, but they could design with the young people and also be able to help us. So last and not least, I really want to emphasize about integrating youth into public-private partnership. I think the keynote speaker spoke about it. And also off-takers contract. Normally, we are talking about grants, but grant is okay, but again, we need branded financing. Because again, in order to remove from project to really successful and sustainable business model is that you move away from a project which is going to last for 3 years or 5 years, and then it's gone. And then when it's gone, you find even sometimes the infrastructure, they're still dormant because that was really not structurally as a business or economical opportunity for them. And also making sure the youth can be able to have really involvement into the designing and the implementation. So I think what we are claiming here is a seat on the table, and so that we can be able to co-design and all responding what we need, not what the development partners or the government think we need. Because if you want to design properly the solution, you have to listen to people who you are designing to them. Thank you.
Excellence. Thank you so much. It's just not about participation. It's about our voice, because our voice counts. We need to be on the table. We just not representation, but be part of the designing. And the most important thing I think you conclude is just not about having a short-term interventions. We need a long, protracted, and well-defined interventions if we are to see the transformation the young people need. Can I confirm if Chikoni has joined us? Chikoni is here? Please, just join, because your question was just a build-up question from Sakina, which basically looking at the existing policy environment. And so you've just joined. I'm not sure whether I need to give you a few minutes to raise, so you're in good shape. Are you in good shape? Oh, I give you a few minutes. Okay, excellent. So let me go to the excellent young lady from Nigeria. How can we strengthen the innovations ecosystem, the incubators, accelerators, and it takes apps to support youth beyond the setup phase? Because I think the most important thing which Mark raised, that how can we leverage technology? How do we leverage AI to make sure that access to market and the engagement of young people just doesn't remain in the boardroom, translate into transformations and the impact they want to see to you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think this is a very important question because as a farmer myself, I work in a rural community. And what that means is that it's a rural community that do not know that they would ever know what a greenhouse infrastructure would look like, right? They are well accustomed with the conventional way of farming. So when we talk about innovations, agri-tech, when we talk about technologies in the agricultural sector, how are we exactly stepping down this innovation and this technology to rural communities, right? A lot of young people now are interested in exploring agriculture, but do not have the capacity, the resources to scale to scale their infrastructure, to scale their vision, to scale their startup. And because the innovation is really moving so fast, for example, you want a young person to go into the agricultural sector to be able to cultivate using controlled environment, greenhouse, but at the point of constructing this thing, it's very expensive, right? So when we talk about innovation, when we talk about technology, and stepping it down to young people, how can we de-risk it? How can we make it affordable? How can we make it accessible? And this innovation and technology we're talking about, are they the things that young people really need to scale, right? Sometimes we sort of sit down in our own comfort zone, designing solutions for young people in rural community that are largely producing what we're eating, but we do not put them and integrate their opinion into the process. So when we leave them behind, whatever solution, innovation, and technology we're bringing, they can't understand it, right? So when we talk about acceleration program, in fact, in Nigeria, for example, we have 6 regions, and what that means is that Nigeria is like the most populated country on the continent, and we all know that over 200 million population. So when you're talking about engaging people in the agricultural sector, you need to literally step it down from the region to the states to the local government. We have over 774 local governments. So that means we need to step down all of this innovation to young people that really matters, that are really doing the work. And I actually agree with the keynote speaker when he mentioned that young people need to be in the process of developing some of these things. And I think that is one of the gaps that is still very wide currently. I've realized that for young people to have access to acceleration program, to have access to grants, to have access to opportunity, they need access to internet, right? So that means they need to move from the village to the city to be able to access these things. But can we bring this innovation, these solutions closer to them, more affordable, more accessible? I think that's like my thoughts when it comes to driving young people in the innovation and the agri-tech, because honestly, agri-tech is currently growing bigger than we think in Africa. A lot of young people will think that they need drone on their farm, but they don't actually need drone right now. What they need is to scale their production. But because they come to forums like this, they see that, oh, investors are investing in drone technology. They want to start using drone, right? But what they need is not drone. What they need is to scale production. So I think this context needs to also be very clear so that everything can go and circulate among young people as long as they're in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very exciting, and always sharing your experience and the work you're doing among the young people is always quite captivating. The colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen who have just joined us, we are here for very exciting sessions which focus on youth-led financing and innovations pathways for agricultural, for agri-food system transformation. And the theme is from policy to practice. Mark from the regional office of FAO delivered the keynote address, and now the young people are here, sharing their perspective, also giving us a direction. How do we move from policy to practice? So far we have received submission from Sakina, and now finally from our sister Balix from Nigeria, and now we're moving to a very exciting young man. It's called Chikoni. Are you ready for the bullet?
Yes, please.
So looking at the current policy environment within the continent, and also listening from the submission from our keynote speaker as well as from your colleagues, do you see the environment, the policy environment, enabling young people? Or is actually constraining young people to effectively engage in agri-food system transformation within the continent?
Thank you so very much, Mr. Moderator. Allow me to tackle that question by talking about what is the enabling aspects and probably the constraints or what is missing. All right, so a lot of African countries, I think the policy environment across many African countries is showing real intent to include young people in agri-food system transformation. I think that's a reason as young people we are seated here. But to be very honest with you, if we look at something which is enabling, you'd realize that, or should I say something which is working out, you'd realize that youth inclusion in national agri strategies by many governments is now taking shape on paper. But most of it's just looking beautiful as paperwork. And you'd realize that opportunities like these ones, they would discuss about the inclusion of young people in the policy on paper, but when you look at the implementation process, it's something which is very different. I feel like regional and conventional frameworks like the CAADP and the African Continental Free Trade Area, there is a strong policy emphasis on youth participation and regional market access, which is encouraging. But like as I was saying, when you look at the implementation gaps, many of these policies just sound progressive on paper, but lack adequate funding, coordination, accountability mechanisms. Therefore, the impact of the results of youth on the ground is very limited. All right, so when we talk of policy, or should I say when we talk about what is really missing or the discrepancy, so to say, there's also limited access to finance and land. All right, so when we talk of finance and land, it's very, very important and critical for the fact that we, the young people, do not have the access, or should I say the funding itself or the land. So it becomes really a challenge. So youth face systematic barriers as we often lack collateral. Our credit history probably is not that good, and land ownership, which locks us out of mainstream financing and investment opportunity. So you'd realize that the implementation aspect is different. There's no any improvement, but when you look at the policies on paper, you could see that they look so progressive, but the implementation is not really there. This brings to my attention that there's also a weak youth voice in policy making, where youths are consulted, like here, we are consulted. But the question is, are we really getting the submissions from the youths and implementing them? Or when we are making the decisions by the decision makers, or when the policy makers are sitting to make the policies, do they really include us, or do they really include our submissions into these things? This brings to something which is, which I'm saying, there's a skill mismatch, as policy environment still favors traditional agricultural training. This is because the young people's submissions are not taken serious. Instead, the elderly people end up implementing what they feel is better or is best for them. So it goes back to the issue of the constraint. It's very high on the implementation where we are failing. But when we look at it from the paperwork or paper aspect, you'd realize that it looks like it's very progressive. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For those who have just joined us, once again, you're most welcome to this very important session on youth-led financing and innovation pathways for agri-food system transformation, which is being co-convened by the African Union with the NEPAD, the Consortiums of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change, Agricultural Policy Dialogue of African Union, as well as the UN FAO. As we finalize, before we conclude, I will open up for 5 minutes for 5 questions strictly. So those who have questions, please take note right now. After the last submissions, then we'll open up for questions, comments, clarifications, because in principle, we are all youth. In principle, we are all youth, so if you're not youth, then you're in the wrong place. We are all youth, and therefore we need to shape this conversation, we need to shape this narrative. As the young man says, it's not about collecting our voice. It's about taking it into action. It's about putting it in the right places where the transformation and changes happen. With that, allow me to invite my friends, because there's been a lot of discussion on technology. Mr. Onas, there's been a lot of discussion about digital financing, about technology. How do we leverage on technology to make the change you want to see for young people? So from your own perspective and experience of the work you're doing, especially with the young people across the world, how can you assess the digital finance, the mobile banking, blockchain, and all this in the process of democratizing the access to agri-foods financing for young people in Africa?
Okay, thanks a lot for the pertinent question. I'm presenting myself again. I'm Onas Rostom. I'm head of Biofertech. It's a deep tech startup specialized in agricultural transition and ecological transition. I'm from Algeria, and I'm representing actually Kayak North Africa. And let's say that I want to showcase and to share with you the experience of my country, Algeria, within investing in agriculture. Here we are today in order to speak and to exchange and to have a reflection about the implementation of the CAADP framework, and in a focal point and in let's say it's a major focal point, let's say the implementation or the engagement of local and African countries and states to invest up to 10% of their GDP in agriculture. And I want to share with you the experience of Algeria in this field. Since we had our independence from France in 1962, we began to inject a lot of money in agriculture at different phases of our history of our nation. And actually, the problem is that it didn't work, and agriculture did never develop in Algeria, simply because there was a lot of programs of subsidies and aids to farmers in the part of machinery, subsidies for land ownership, for energy, for water, and for fertilizers. But the problem was that those aids and subsidies were not well oriented, simply because we didn't think of digitalization and quantification. We didn't manage to measure what we will manage and what we will fund and invest into. And this is a crucial problem, and I don't want the CAADP program in other countries to face the same problems. And I think also as youth entrepreneurs and youth-led organizations, we should think of implementing open innovation programs and open innovation frameworks for scaling innovation between youth organizations and youth startups and farmers, organizations, and especially, let's say, governments or governmental institutions. I think that whether it is for the 5 regions of our African country, we are all facing extreme conditions when it comes to agricultural activities or agricultural, let's say, entrepreneurship or programs. For Algeria, in Algeria, for example, we have a very ambitious project. It's 1 million hectares of regenerative agriculture. We have also a project of afforestation up to 500 million trees that we will plant within the next years. And I want to say that we have to empower youth-led startups in order to develop solutions under those extreme conditions and to scale innovation not just from the north to the south, from Europe and Western world to Africa. But I want to share with you the idea that the solutions in digitalization, in insurtech, in climate tech, in climate finance that African youth are developing under extreme conditions in all the parts of Africa can be exportable and can be a source for new revenue streams for Africa. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's quite exciting and captivating just to hear in terms of the how do we leverage the use of technology in accessing financing, market, and also moving forward. By show of hand, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, how many of us are no longer youth? Is anyone who is not a youth here? Hello? How many of you are not a youth? At least by show of hand. I want to know the people who feel like they're no longer youth. So we are only 2. We're only 2 people who still belong in the youth family. We are all youth in all aspects. First and foremost, you have been a youth. So you understand the conversation the young people are bringing in this conversation. Secondly, in one way or another, you have a youth at home. You have a youth who has shared it with you. Therefore, it's a conversation we all need to join hands. It's just not about the young people. It's about the future of the continent we all want to see and the narrative and the trajectory change. And the change starts now. It starts from this meeting that tells you that Agrifood and NEPAD and African Union, together with the government of Rwanda, dedicated over 4 sessions to have a conversation about the youth. It's not by mistake. It is by design that we should all shape this conversation and make a different young people to come. Even this one at a transition, but they still want to make a contribution. Therefore, your contributions count. As we are going to open up for plenary question and answer system, how do we move forward? Allow me to end the panel sessions by inviting Rose, who has been one of the conveners for this meeting, but also has played a very crucial role to ensure that we are here today. So Rose, from the submission from your colleagues and what they've shared so far, because the whole conversation of being policies. Because if we don't have the right environment, we don't have the enabling environment for young people to engage, it's always going to be a challenge. From your engagement with the young people, what has been some of the gaps? What have been some of the barriers? And what are some of the recommendations are you sharing that we make sure that the youth, not just prevented or constrained in policy engagement, but we have a conversation that scales their conversations in promoting innovations in agriculture and food system in Africa. If you could keep it in 2 minutes, I'll appreciate it. Then I will open up for 5 people, then we wrap up.
All right, thank you so much. I'm glad to see you all here. All right, from this conversation, I feel like the youth, they need to be part of implementation process, not only being part of the table in formulation of the policies, but also in the implementation. And this is just a call to all the people in the government, in continental bodies, to hold the youth. Even when you are going into the CAADP implementation, let the youth be part of the implementation. Not only should they be part of the policy making, but they should be part of the implementation. Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Excellent. So with that, you've heard from the young people, quite range of topics from technology, innovations, market, banking, financing. So let's open up for questions, answers, clarifications, or actually your contribution. How do we move? How do we have these conversations that accelerate us moving just from policies to practice? So by show of hand, if you have something to share with our panelists, you have a question, you have a comment, just put up your hand, and therefore someone will be in position to hand you a mic. And we only have 5 minutes. And it'll be good for you to make a contribution. So these young people feel like they're spoken to policymakers, they're spoken to decision makers. Because if you don't speak, it feels like they're spoken to themselves. So by show of hand, can I see the people who want to share their perspective from the submission from the young people? I want to take 5 at once, so I have 1. Is there another person so that, because the next session I have to start, before Robert kicked me out of this place, because I know his session is starting soon at the team. So you start, and so wait for other colleagues who will be coming in as well.
Allow me to stand up,
Sure,
because
sure.
I value much this high-level panel of our youth. And thank you, Mr. Moderator, for your offering, your hand to lift up, our young generation. I'm Françoise Mukiza. I'm a member of parliament from the East African Legislative Assembly, YALA. And I'm here as a member of the African Food Systems Parliamentary Network. I was blessed by the trust of my colleagues to be recently appointed the Deputy SG of this network. Wow. I come from Rwanda. So you can understand how excited I am and how beautiful, this morning is blessed by having this panel. I want to share something just straight as a member of parliament at the regional level. We have been working closely with the young generation. I even moved a motion to support women and youth in the businesses, in the agri-food systems, in terms of, having some startups because of the issues we have been, exposed to when it comes to the young generation. All these issues we have been talking about, infrastructure, lack of financing, lack of collaterals. We know some countries are trying their best, like Rwanda. Sakina can be the eyewitness how they are supported under their network of youth in agribusiness. But we want these good practices to be scaled up to all countries of Africa. Africa is our continent. Africa has potentials. Arable land, more than 60% of African land is arable. And we can take this advantage because we have energy. All of us, in the principle, we are the youth. But you are at the forefront of this youthfulness we are talking about. So you are here, you represent your colleagues. So go and tell them, youth, no more dreams. We want you at the battleground of agriculture. These mechanization things, go and learn how to drive trucks. Recently, I heard the youth were called upon to go and learn trucks here in Kigali. But how many attended? You are still having like a mindset that, those things are not for the young generation. You want money that is coming straightforward, a lot of money to get rich. But I know some of you are also committed to change this mindset that you are supporting, Africa as a continent. You want to support farmers, you want to be part of women farmers like custodians of our health and livelihoods. So what I want to tell you is that as members of parliament, we're supporting all these issues you are having. Yesterday I said, I was a part of the AFC FTA protocol ideation meetings, whereby youth, you were on board. It was launched in Dar es Salaam. And you are the engine of everything because of your capacity of being able to innovate. So these innovations in terms of irrigation, you need to support, our mothers that are there. So you should add energy and passion and dedication like we are as members of parliament that are willing to support Africa. A lot will change. But with your support, you, young generation, we will even move from, now we are ending up with the Malabo Declaration, and we are starting a new era, 10 years ahead of us, of Kampala Declaration. So we are together. But allow me also to add on something very important. When it comes to financing, you should also be innovative in creating jobs. By yourselves, it's possible. If you have like a network, like this network, you can also innovate those networks. When you are together in cooperatives, it's easy to locate you. It's very easy to support you and to advocate for the youth in agriculture, in agribusinesses. Trade, standards, young generation, quality products. The issue of trade now in Africa is about SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary measures that are a hindrance to trading across Africa, but also outside Africa. Please, quality work, laboring, markets, you can do it, and you are able to do that. We are there. If any problem, you know where to find us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Thank you so much for those words of encouragement, but most importantly, challenging the young people to be an ambassador of change. We count on your leadership, we count on your partnership and collaboration with young people to make this change possible. For the interest of time, and it seems everyone, okay, one last one, then we close. Yes, my brother. Someone's hand the mic, and then we'll be closing our session. Robert, we are sorry. Just give us 5 more minutes, we close formally.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Baba Femi Oyewole. I'm the CEO of Pan-African Farmers Organization, an organization that unites over 80 million farmers in Africa. I want to ask our youths, the average age of farmers in Africa is about 60 years. And this is a real challenge. So what are they doing to make youths come into agriculture? Because if we do not bring youth into agriculture, in the next 20, 30 years, there will be a problem of food security in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So the average age of farmers in Africa is 60 years. Chikone, do you agree? But as the young people, quite interesting. So with that, our dear...
Can I respond to his question?
No, I'm going to give you to respond. Okay. Actually, you'll have each 1 minute so that we allow the next session to start. So starting from my brother Chikone, and then we end with Sakina. You just have 1 minute, 30 seconds for any question, clarification, and then 30 seconds for your closing shot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Mine probably goes to the Honorable there. When we talk of finance as young people, we do not really mean that we really need money, a lot of money that we get rich. And it's not like we cannot be very innovative to generate income. But truth be told, you'd realize that maybe as young people, what we are requesting for when we talk of finance, maybe what we should really put into consideration is we should have an intentional mentorship program, something which can be ongoing, so that as we give finance to the young people, we really prepare them mentally. I think most of the times young people, when they are given finance, we fail to handle it, not because we cannot handle it, and I think that's a reason a lot of people have lost, I think, trust into the young people, but I feel we fail to prepare the young people adequately. So if we can prepare the young people adequately, proper mentorship, which is very intentional, it could be very easy for us to become more innovative, generate more income, and we could see a lot of young people jumping on the bandwagon of agriculture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rose?
All right, let me just give a touch of an answer to
Just keep it 1 minute.
Yeah.
Just we need really time back.
Yeah, so I came across a post which was asking, why do people who study agriculture, they find themselves looking for employment, not going directly into farming? And one of the things is most of the young people, the big issue is finances. It's not like they're not attracted to farming, agriculture, but the big problem is finance. How can we be able to support the young people in terms of age registration, in acquiring finance? How can we be able to support them? So it's not an issue of making policies that attract, but when you go to the ground, nothing is happening. So you have to implement the policies that you make, on paper.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Onas.
Thanks
1
a lot. Thanks for the pertinent question. I think that to respond to this question, we need to understand that we need to transition from subsistence agriculture to industrial agriculture in some African countries in order to ensure food security. And to reach these goals, we need to understand that we have legacy traditions in order, in terms of legating lands to youth, African youth. And when we lack those lands, it's morselled and parcelled lands, very small areas that we can not exploit and where we can not invest in terms of large crop yields. And it's a very big problem, the morsellation of lands and crop yield areas.
Thank you.
We need to upscale this problem in order to speak about what youth can do to reach food security at regional and Pan-African scale.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Balik.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member. And I'm passionate about the question that our daddy asked about young people in the primary production, cultivating, farming. I think this is going to go back to the older generation, to the development partners. We need to start investing the same energy we are putting into young people going into agri-tech, young people using AI for agriculture. Can we use that same energy resources to provide for young people land resources for them to cultivate? Because without production, we can't use AI. Without production, the person adding value to the produce cannot have market. So we need more investment. In terms of investment, we're not just talking about finance. We're talking about land ownership. We're talking about access to input for them to be able to cultivate. A lot of young people now, the narrative they have is, I want to go into agri-tech, I want to use drone for agriculture. That is it. But not a lot of them wants to go and put their hand into the soil and cultivate. So we need to encourage more young people to be in the primary production of things in the agricultural sector and not just using the tech. I try as much as possible because I'm a primary producer. I put my hand in the soil, right? And I use that to inspire other young people to make farming sexy. It's not just about drone, it's not just about the tractors, it's not just about traveling abroad, for all this tech exhibition. It's also about adding value to the soil by cultivating on the land. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Sakina, we need to make farming sexy.
Exactly. I think we have really to change the image of agriculture. As we were saying that we need to really involve the young people. I can give example in Rwanda where during the PSTA 5, we are consulted, we are into designing, and also when they were launching it, we made a commitment as young people. And one of the commitments is what my colleague said regarding the technology, mechanization, if in Africa we are still getting the yield of 1.5 ton per hectare, for example, for maize, in the other part of the world, they are making 10 tons. What is the difference? We don't want to really live like the way the older generation have been living, where agriculture is for the survival. No, we want to make agriculture sexy, but also productive and also profitable. Because if you don't make it profitable, then there's no point for us as young people to join. And another thing I can say is that we need really to support the youth-led businesses that are into agribusiness. We fund them, invest in them, and making sure also we facilitate the market. If they are going to do the market trading between each other, what is the support are you providing within the standard? What is support are you providing with infrastructure? So what we are doing also in Rwanda, we are really changing the image. When you look at me, I'm a farmer. But when you go to internet, the one picture you see about the farmers is someone who is dirty, who is that. If a young person from Rwanda sit there and see someone like me, they will say, oh, I want to be in agribusiness. But if they see the old person, they don't want to be like that. So I think if we change image and we be intentional in investing in young people, we are joining. And lastly, in Rwanda, there was issue of coffee farmers, where the coffee, they are growing old, and also the farmers are also growing old. Now they had a campaign renewing the tree, but also emphasizing the young people to join the sector, which is sometimes is difficulty for even younger generation to join. So with this, through RIAF, I think when young people having this organization coming together and they are supported and they can even see role models, I think we are joining and we are really trying to change the image. What we need is how do we scaling up across the continent.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A big applause of hand claps to our panelists. On behalf of the conveners, which is the African Union Commissions, the UDA NEPAD, the Consortium of African Youth in Agriculture and Climate Change, KAYAK, the UN FAO, and the Agricultural Policy Dialogue, I wish to thank you so much for participating in the youth-led financing and innovation pathways for agri-food system transformation. It is a pleasure and an honor to be requested to facilitate this meeting, and we continue having this conversation, how do we move from policy to practice. It's a conversation which is not ending here. It's a conversation that honorable members of parliament has put it. It's a conversation that we need to keep in the boardroom, we keep in the garden, and we'll make sure that coffee growers and coffee doesn't grow old. We need to make them young and make farming sexy. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
How do we forge inclusive partnership for investment, financing, and the value chain development? Last week we talked about 20% of budget to be devoted to agriculture. Now we still keep that, but also we need to get $100 billion for agri-food systems. Without further ado, we need to figure out how do we do that. We have an expert in the room who will do the opening remarks. This is Mr. Odd Eric Amerson, Minister Councillor, Regional Envoy of Food Security, Norwegian Embassy. Please welcome to give us opening remarks and also give us a hint, how do you proceed with this 100 billion CAADP implementation. A round of applause for Odd.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm happy to be upgraded as an expert, which I'm not really, but I'll try to pretend. It should have been Tim Robertson from the World Bank who should have made this presentation. He has the menu on how to do this, so it's a pity he's not here. So we had to do with my reflections based on quite a number of years in Africa and Asia in the agricultural sector. I'm trying to be a bit provocative this time because the picture is not very rosy. When we look at investments in agriculture and the growth in agriculture in these regions, there are some very good exceptions, but overall there is a challenge to mobilize capital. And we all know, and we were reminded actually by one of the youth that were speaking earlier today, that the first billion starts with the first dollar, kwacha, bir, shilling made in profit by a farmer. Sometimes I think we are talking up here about agribusiness, etc. The whole farming, the whole food system, it relies on one thing, and that is that there's a willing farmer with her husband that plants a good seed in good soils, get a good crop, and sells it at a profit to reinvest. If that doesn't happen, we can forget about all the other visions we have. And it's not happening. Productivity in African agriculture, it varies, some good examples, but it's quite stagnant over the last 20 years, although technologies are there. We've had improved high-yielding varieties last 20, 30 years. So what is the issue here? And I don't have the answer, but I can ask some questions. Because, of course, we have the target of CAADP of 6% investment of the national budget into agriculture, which very few countries are able to achieve, if any. I think there's been a couple of years where we have seen that with some countries, to achieve 10% growth. We know that government cannot drive agricultural sector growth. I mean, that's obvious to all. But government can use its investment to facilitate private sector investments. And that's where I think we have not had the good models on how to do this. We come from a donor government background. We have our plans and programs, investment programs. But this doesn't talk to private sector who wants to make a deal. I'm buying one crop. I buy sorghum for my beer factory. I want to discuss how can I get good quality sorghum for my factory in a volume in the most effective manner. They don't sit in these meetings, and I've been in a number of national meetings, and you see private sector don't appear because we don't talk to them in the manner that is businesslike. So I think we are looking for some new models. We have tried Grow Africa, we tried investments, we have IFC, we have the banks investing in companies. But these companies strive in the risk upstream, downstream in the value chain, which they don't command. It's a question of having the ecosystem, the economic framework for these businesses to grow. So a spot investment here might be successful, but it doesn't turn the industry around. We've done sector programs, we have development programs, but they are to a large extent focused on government capacity. And I listened to one private sector representative here, or was it another meeting? They hold their breath when they see that the government gets $100 million grant or loan from a bank. Because potentially that increases the government space in the market, making that space more limited for private sector. Potentially, not necessarily, but there's a fear. So it's a bit about what type of policies can actually facilitate investments. And what type of investment environment do we have? I'm not going to mention names. Again, I'm going to be a bit critical to trigger discussions. I hope you can bear with me. SA Agric, one of the big agribusiness associations in South Africa, visited one country to see whether they would like to recommend farmers and businesses in the ag sector to invest in that country. Upon departure, he was interviewed by newspapers, and they asked him, okay, now we have seen our beautiful country and we have a lot of room for private investments. Are you going to recommend South African businesses to invest in this country? His answer was very clear. If you go to South Africa, the farmers, the companies like to be close to government because they know they will get support. In this country, farmers want and businesses want to be as far as possible away from government because they know that there will be demand on them. Some just, but also some they feel is not just. I think that's a very bad signal to give to other investors coming to this country, and that has to change. This is private sector being very honest for this particular country that this is not an investment destination. You don't have the framework here to make private sector grow. So what needs to be changed? And I see Tim is in the room now, so he can come with the answer. No, he disappeared again. We know that a sector is in trouble when national banks are giving high interest rates to loans in that particular sector. That has to change. I mean, how are you going to develop private sector and businesses if banks don't believe in the sector? There are so many indicators that we see that private sector is shying away, and we also see that from the larger companies, international, that are going out of the African market because it's too difficult, unpredictable, etc. I think, first of all, the agricultural sector growth, this is not a zero-sum game. It's not a pie where the government has this role and then we leave something. This is an expanding market. We need more investments. So it's not a zero-sum game as such. We see now that there is a reduction in international financing. Donors are refocusing and reducing their budgets. So it's not only to do thinking in the investment or financial world we had 2 years ago. This is shrinking. So you have to do more with less, being smarter, and private sector is clearly a part of that solution. I don't think anyone in this room questions that. Our problem is how. We tried sector programs, we tried Grow Africa investments, we have IFC, we have the development banks that do the spot investments in companies. But we have no tool that can actually turn around the industry on that particular crop. And I think one of the issues we have had is that we're talking about private sector as it was one unit, one entity. We have not come to the level where we talk business. Private sector wants to make a deal. But where are we when we want to engage in that discussion on a deal or that long-term investment by private sector? Starting with the farmer. It has to be farmer-centric. Again, the first $1 billion starts with the first kwacha shilling made in profit by a farmer. So we have to think through that everybody needs to make money in this specific crop commodity chain. And this is beyond the Ministry of Agriculture. I think that's one of the challenges we had. We work with Ministry of Agriculture. You probably representatives here. But agriculture is just as much industry and trade. It's the Ministry of Finance. That's where you see job creation, that's where you see the processing happening. And that's where the policy framework has to match the one at the ag sector, because the value chain, when we talk about that, it's often restricted to input-output. And often ministers of agriculture are happy when they see the grain bins are full. But what happens after that is the responsibility of the government, of other ministries, that will facilitate the value addition. But we are a bit narrow-minded in how we look at this. But I think the food systems perspective actually gives you that space. It's a government agenda. So if a country like Tanzania, who has a very good rice strategy, but they don't have a business plan to realize that rice strategy, they have a government investment framework that doesn't talk to businesses. It's so so if I was a businessman, I would sort of, where do I make the deal here? I can't find it. So there's no space for this type of dialogue that can trigger investments. Because, as I said, the risk is not only in the business plan of the company, it's the upstream, downstream risk, which is the greatest. And that company cannot do anything about it. That's where others have to come in and support, whether it's outgrower schemes, whether it's contract farming, whether it's warehouse systems. All these things have to match to make the industry grow. So we are searching. We don't have the answer. The answer is certainly not in more money, and we know that there's not more money coming, so we have to be smarter, and we have to really attract private sector investment. So the SA Agric from South Africa cannot come and complain that we don't invest here because the farmers are afraid of government. That's not how you can develop the sector. I'm not saying that all countries are like this, but this was, I'm citing from the newspapers what he said in one particular country. So, I don't have the answer, I'm sorry, but I think there's a type of new thinking which I hope will enable us to have, or you to have, that discussion with private sector, that we can facilitate more investments. And I think that the panel afterwards will go more into depth of how can we create that space which makes private sector interested and willing to risk capital. Sorry, again, I don't have the answer, although I'm upgraded as an expert, but I hope this triggered some thinking. But I'm sure the panel will go further into this type of discussions and challenges that we see to make this sector an investment destination, both for the smallholder farmer or the family farm and all the businesses that's needed through the commodity chain until you see a finished product, a commodity in your stores or sold to more prosperous markets outside the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Another round of applause. I think this is very important. You say don't have an answer, but you provide some hints. Of course, when I was sitting, when you were talking, I thought about this word resilience. You know, we are talking about building resilient, sustainable agri-food systems. This resilience is not only about being resilient about climate, weather, shocks, and other things, but also being resilient when there's no money, but you still get your 100 billion. Also, it's another kind of resilience. We know we have to work under changing geopolitics. You said it correctly. Maybe that's what we want to hear. Money is reducing. Donors are not interested. Other things are coming in. There's Ukraine. There's many things. Trade wars, everybody knows what's going on. But Africa, we should not be distracted. We need to be resilient. So we need to make real deals to make sure we advance our food systems on the continent. Otherwise, I'm not sure I don't have another choice. Now, we'll hear about our panelists soon, who we try to go into details. How do we make real deals? How do we make a kind of commodity compact approach to public-private investment, as rightly said Mr. Ord, and innovative financing in key value chains? So we need innovative financing. But before I call the panelists, let me hear a kind of let's call for a joint presentation between ADFNS and AGRA. Let's call Mr. Chola Mfula. This is Agribusiness and Investment Program Officer of ADFNS to come to do a presentation on Accent Kampala CAADP Commitment 1 and 2. And also he will be submitted by Dr. Yifruta Fese Bekele, the head of state capability in AGRA, to set the stage. You have 10 minutes, all of you. Thank you. Be careful with this.
Good morning, good morning. Could you kindly help with the presentation? While that is coming up, I'd just like to thank the moderator and also thank our director, who's not here, but I think she's following and she's listening in. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. My name is Chola Mfula, and I work with the African Union Development Agency, and I'm working on the programs of agribusiness and investments. And today I want to just give you a short presentation around this 100 billion that we're mentioning, and how I think we've all known that we say that it shall come from private sector, public sector, but then how does that come together? In what kind of format? So clearly we need some tools that will allow that to happen. So this presentation, in part, shall look at some of the things that we're proposing in terms of the deal, making the deal happen. And as the Ord said before, we have tried various other initiatives. I was in Grafrica, I was on Farm to Market Alliance, I'm part of the CAADP process, I've been in private sector. So quite clearly, I think there is a lot of need now to use that knowledge that has been gathered over the last decade plus to shift gears and get into a position where we can actually start making the deal happen. Now, I think just to put everything in context, it's important to touch a little bit on what Ord mentioned. You see, if we're going to bring the private sector on board and we're going to get these investments, there are two key determinants: returns and risk. And if we do not address this starting from the farmer level all the way through the value chain, it becomes difficult for the investor to put their money in. So the return really is the gain. When I invest my money, how much will I gain from this? But every investment comes with risk. And investors don't avoid risk. Their job is to manage it, and if the returns are higher than the risk, then they'll probably do it. If you look at mining, it's a very risky business. But the returns justify the risks, and that's why this is happening. And I think even in agriculture, we need to get to a point where we are able to look at the returns that are going to be gotten vis-a-vis the risks that are there. So when I've listened to a lot of discussions throughout this week, it's just that they've been framed differently. But ideally, everyone is talking about returns, and everyone's talking about risks. We heard the presentation on soil. The reason why we want more productive soil is because we want the soils to perform better so that the return on investment for the farmers is higher. When you look at policy and why we want to change policy, Ideally, it's about these two things. How do we increase returns and how reduce risk? When I hear the farmers complaining, they are complaining because they are worried about the returns. And maybe the risks are too high. So whatever we try to do now within CAADP Kampala moving forward, I think we need to really look at it from a business lens. And if we're going to attract private sector investment, is that all these things, if we say we're training farmers, why are we doing it? We're doing it because we want to increase their returns. And if we're changing a certain policy, it's because we want to reduce the risk so that the sector begins to thrive. Now, because agriculture is developmental, these other things are also important. Liquidity. There should be money within the economies. The domestic resource mobilization that has been mentioned, the public financing that has been mentioned, that money must be there because private sector needs to access it and give them some level of flexibility around their investments. You look at the regulatory and policy environment. Policies must be stable. Government must guarantee policy stability because agriculture is long-term. And so if you're going to get your returns after 3 or 4 years, policies must be stable within that space. Then we have social and developmental impacts, the kind of jobs that is going to create, food and nutrition security, the impact on environment and so forth. And those things must also be there. The governance structure, equally important, because the governance structure enhances credibility. Where you're worried about the governance structure, stability, investors won't come. So some of the things that we're talking about, the food governance structures and so forth, it becomes very important in terms of how we get that done. Then the risks and mitigation instruments must also be there. So when I hear issues on blended finance, it's not that we just want to create it. It's a risk mitigation measure that we need to use. When you look at crop financing and all these things, there are risk mitigation measures, and they must be there for this to happen. But the key thing, where this discussion starts from, is returns and risk. So let me go to the next slide. So what we're proposing here as one of the tools in terms of how we make CAADP Kampala practical, how we move it from rooms such as this to some rural area in Tanzania or Zambia, is through mechanisms such as commodity compacts. Now these compacts, by name, it's just really bringing the coalition of the willing, because we know that if we're going to raise 100 billion, you need different actors and different players for them to come together and agree in terms of how that is going to be done. Now this agreement, again, if from my point of view and how I work, is that if you look at the theory of change here, it goes back to the same thing, returns and risks. And so whatever interventions that we put in there must really look at those kind of things. So as a broader intervention, if we integrate value chains, and this is what Od was talking about, the forward and the backward integration, and we reduce risks and enhance returns on investments, then we'll be talking about something that can create a deal for all the partners that are involved. I will not talk about the commitments, but the only reason I put them there is because when you look at these, the commitments that are within CAADP, ideally they fall within the issue, the investment decision-making and what influences them. Almost all of them. Commitment 1, commitment 2, probably touch on 1 and 2, risk and investments. The other commitments are within the policy, they're also within social and development impacts and the governance and so forth. So they are really covered within the decision-making process of investors. But I think what it is how do we change that language to something like this? Now, as a compact, it has to follow different layers. The base is the farmers. And if the farmers are not getting returns and they feel and the business is risky, then clearly the whole thing doesn't work. So we need to start there. What are we doing in our different organizations, government, NGOs, development partners, and so forth, to address this? How are farmers going to get better returns, and how are we going to reduce risk? And what kind of mechanisms can be placed there to mitigate risk? So if we begin to think in that particular manner, then we know that we are beginning to develop value chains that can work and become competitive. Because the challenge with value chains is if you're uncompetitive at production level, that cost just doesn't disappear, it's absorbed within the value chain. And then it's passed on to the aggregator, the processor, the distributor, and finally it will hit the market. And when you hit the market, you complain that locally produced goods are more expensive. Imported things are much, much cheaper. And so you fail to compete. So it starts from there. How are we going to do this? And so when you look at commitment 1 and why it talks about intensifying food production, it must be done in a competitive manner. The other part of this is that you look at the national level. And beyond the national level, you can then start looking at the regional level. But it requires a lot of partners. Government, different ministries. Private sector actors, different, from the farmers, aggregators, processors, markets, and so forth. So it requires a lot of work in terms of how this can come together. Now, this is a food systems approach, which we are going to continue to use. But again, when you look at the various components, and I'll not go through all of them, ideally each and every one of them talks to returns and talks to risks. And the reason why we are even thinking of the compact in the first place is because it will help to increase returns and reduce risks. Whether you want to call it an anchor model or whatever, it's basically about the same thing. Cooperatives is basically about the same thing. So it's really getting ingrained that this is a business, and that business starts from the soil all the way to markets, and as long as it's a business, then returns and risks are part of the discussion. So this is not conclusive, and I've talked to a lot of these things already in my discussion, is that there need to be certain guidance in terms of how people work together. Agriculture is long-term. We need to look at the long-term viability. We need to look at how to build business-to-business arrangements within there, not because it's nice, but because the businesses are getting returns by working together. We also need to look at how we spread it geographically, from the subnational, national, all the way to the regional level. And the regional level is very important because some of our markets, I come from Zambia, the population is only 20 million, it's a small market. And if we get to the 10 million that the president is talking about, where is that maize going to go? So it has to be exported somehow. So the compacts must also have that view in terms of getting to the regional markets. And of course, we are still working within the guidance of various frameworks such as NAIPS, so that is also clear. But it's a bottom-up approach. The bottom is what's going to support agri-food systems transformation in Africa. And if the bottom is not making money, they are worried about the returns because the risks are too high, then it will not happen. Farming is no longer a social sector, it's a business. And I've talked about this already in terms of how it connects to regional things, and we are trying to see how already there is so much talk about the food corridors and food baskets, and as African countries begin to work together, it will be important that if there is a country in surplus, the data is there and it's possible to use food corridors and competitively deliver these things to a deficit market. At this point, I will hand the rest of the discussions to my brother and sister from AGRA to give you practical things that are working in Tanzania, Malawi, and Ethiopia around this. But before I leave the stage, if there's anything, even if you forget everything I've said, remember these two things: returns and risks. Remember those two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dorcas Mwakoi. I work for AGRA in Tanzania as the head of programs. Based on the context given and the key principles given in terms of fostering partnerships around national agricultural plans, I want to give a case of Tanzania, where the government of Tanzania, can go to the next slide, is rolling out agricultural growth corridor across the country, 3 corridors. Can I have the slides move? So, sorry. Yeah, so the government of Tanzania, in line with the Kampala Declaration, has come up with the agricultural master plan for 2050 agricultural master plan, very robust plan, with 16 flagships identified to transform Tanzania. And among the flagships, there's flagship number 7 that leverages on the gains that have been made since 2010, where the government of Tanzania rolled out Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor. So based on the gains and learnings made that time, the government has set up a flagship to scale up into 3 more corridors, and we have a flagship called Agricultural Growth Corridor Model, which is very critical in terms of investments and commercialization across those corridors. So also based on the key risks that we have to look at, and what my previous speaker has talked about, in that program, we are looking at 4 main primary constraints, looking around key regulatory constraints across those corridors. So what as AGRA we are doing, or collaborating with government, not AGRA alone, but with also other key stakeholders. Of course, NORAD giving a lot of lead there. We are working to do deep dives in terms of across those corridors. What are the key policy constants? What are the key systemic policy nature challenges that will need to be unlocked to be able to unlock private investments and make the corridor model function? The other issue is, of course, government as a key convener, as a lead in this program. We need to see how do we strengthen capacities of the institutions responsible for leading and executing these programs. Talking about Agricultural Transformation Office, it's an office recently established to bring multi-stakeholder coordination, bring convener role, mobilizing private sector, championing the agenda for policy reforms and regulatory reforms. So it's an institution we are working with. And of course, there's AGOT Secretariat that was there in the rollout of SAGOT. We also have a key regulatory agency, the Crops Regulatory Agency, COPRA, which are key institutions that are that should be fostered and strengthened to deliver their mandate. We are talking also about creating partnerships across these corridors, and also looking at key environmental risks. Remember, across these corridors, we have tourism, we have national parks, we have other infrastructure. So we are at the moment doing a deep dive in terms of, with the government, a deep dive in terms of how do we develop these compacts across the 3 corridors. The green part you see is what has been there since 2010. And I must say there was success in this corridor to a big extent, where 6.3 billion US dollar was mobilized, out of which 1.3 US dollar was from private sector. Government itself contributed around 5 billion US dollar. A total of 856,000 farmers were also reached in the southern corridor, the green part you see. But now the government is extending to those other 3 corridors. So what are the key lessons we are carrying from SAGOT to scale up in this, the new corridors? Important thing is that it is important that we scale up commodity compact, and we have learned this from other countries where it has worked well. My colleague will talk about Ethiopia, but again, even out of the continent, Vietnam and Japan, commodity compacts is a great model where you identify key priority value chains that are going to be transformative across those corridors. So like at the moment in the AGOT, we are already developing these compacts. How? It is multi-stakeholder engagement, working with all government entities, including Ministry of Roads, Ministry of Water, Ministry of Lands, Environment, beyond agriculture, and also private sector and various development partners and private sector for a shared vision around the commodity compact. So again, alongside the commodity compacts, we will have what we call blueprints. This is the kind of environmental plan, environmental safeguard plan. Now, the other lesson we have learned is that it is important that there is spatial development across, in terms of along those corridors. Talking about along the corridors, you have to identify clusters where we'll have high intensity of stakeholders that are gathering together around common infrastructure. For example, railway, talking about airways, talking about grain facilities, grain storage facilities, talk of banks. So within that cluster, informed by of course, the commodity compacts, we expect to have this kind of cluster frameworks at the local level, at the subnational level, at the district level, and along the corridors. Another key element we learned from SAGOT is that farmer aggregation and last mile delivery is very important, because farmers need to produce the high quality products as required by private sector. So those linkages and service delivery to farmers to be able to produce the right commodities for the market and in the best quality is very important. And of course, end-to-end value chain linkages, right from research to inputs across the value chain. Another important thing is of course, working with a key industry-wide group along those clusters to be able to move the key agenda, transformation agenda in those corridors. So I've talked about commodity compacts that are very necessary along those corridors, and also cluster frameworks. And if you look at what we have there, it showcases an example of a cluster in a given corridor. So in a given cluster, it will allow small and medium scale farmers to share benefits for scale and access infrastructure, as you can see, as I've already described, various infrastructure from research across the value chain. So this is what we are doing in Tanzania. We are very hopeful. We are not doing, as AGRA, we want to see how do we catalyze the system, how do we support the institutions that are leading this and ensure better coordination. Coordination is key, and bringing everybody for that common agenda. So I think my colleague, Dr. Yifru, should be able to come up and talk about Malawi and Ethiopia.
Thank you, moderator. I know we are taking some time, but I will be very much brief. And the two components. Chola has told us the model, and then Dorcas has shown us how the rubber hits the road in Tanzania extensively. So I'll not take much time on Malawi, because we launched it with NORAD, with the support of OR last year, the compact model in Malawi, anchoring on the mega farms. That's really the Malawi's flagship program that the government has been driving. And all key actors, private sectors, have been involved in this process to bring in the compact model into reality. So if you see the two primary commodities that this model focuses is the soybean and the soybean and the groundnuts. So there's a clear target by the end of 2030 where these two commodities will reach. So this model, as has been indicated, is built bottom up, where it focuses concentrating on the mega farms and commercial farms of more than 5,500 hectares, linking smallholder farmers as off-takers and service, mechanization as service providers, to connect them with agro-processors. So the agro-processors are in place, the mega farms are there, anchoring and helping as a hub for smallholder farmers. There is another actor that are involved in the process, the financing and market system actors. So the financing system in place to provide de-risking mechanisms and providing warehousing risk system and also insurance cover. So we have those actors in place. We have mechanization irrigation service providers that provide access to tractors, combine harvesters, irrigation systems. So they are supporting the small farmers in providing those services. The key thing is that the government has that commitment to support and create the enabling environment for all those actors. So the government buying and the governance structure is quite critical to drive this initiative. So the government of Malawi has a high-level commitment to drive this initiative under the leadership of the Vice President. And this is really quite encouraging to emulate. So by the end of, I think, this program, we expect a quite significant increment in yield of both soya and groundnuts. And we will try to also scale further in other parts of the country. That's briefly about Malawi. Now, when it comes to Ethiopia, the Ethiopian model is a bit different than the compact model. I've been working in Ethiopia, and NORAD has been one of the key supporters, along with other development partners, when the agricultural commercialization initiative was launched in 2019. So the key challenges there are a number of challenges, but the primary there was fragmentation of land. So how do we bring fragmentation of land, smallholder farmers into a cluster so that they can serve as a small commercial farms? That's the rationale behind for the major rationale behind for the bringing the cluster approach in Ethiopia. Let me just move into, there are 11 commodities, 6 on grain crops, and then 5 on horticultural commodities. And those commodities are selected deliberately because they ensure food security, and at the same time they feed as a commercial crop to industries. So I don't want to get into the details of each of the commodities, but these are the 11 commodities. And the cluster has been operating in 7 regions, covering 311 districts, we call it waradas. And there are about 31 clusters in that program. let me just jump into, so as you know, the program, the clustering program goes through across the value chain, and the most important thing is that how this clustering approach has been organized. So we have strong cooperatives in the system. Unlike the cooperative system, this one was organized based on a voluntary system. So farmers that have at least 2.5 hectares of land have to come together voluntarily. And we need to have at least 60 farmers to come to form the cluster so that they become like 15 hectares of land per cluster. So the cluster has its own leadership, as you can see, comprising of 4 people. At least one has to be a woman, and they have a leader. So that's how there has been a clear guidance how they administer and manage each of the cluster activities given to them. That's the journey they should go. Eventually, we expect the clusters. Today is, the country has now 6 years in terms of driving the clustering approach. And through that approach, as you might have heard, the wheat cluster has been the major clustering approach where the country has become self-sufficient in terms of the wheat production. So we expect those cluster farmers to become enterprises by the end of 2030. There is a phase 2 commodity agriculture commercial cluster that has been launched this year. So we expect that to happen by the end of 2030. So again, these are some of the achievements, but not takes much time. The key thing is, what were the role of the private sector in this process? So what happened was, because the approach was through what has been working across the value chain, there are market actors, private sector actors. So investment cases have been developed to support cluster farmers and bringing private sector to be as off-takers. So we did that investment cases and pitched to bring in 3 major global investors in the space in the malt barley area and soybean. The 2 major malting companies in the world, Bolt Malt and maybe Soufflet, that you can see on the slide, have invested in the country with over $100 million investments, working together with over 60,000 smallholder farmers, cluster farmers, as off-takers and input suppliers as well. So that's where the critical role of the private sector comes in, especially in an approach where it is, the Ethiopian model is more of a top-down approach, but this model of the compact is more of bottom-up approach. So that you can see the differences, which model can really apply effectively, depends on the country context. But this is how the Ethiopian experience has been organized. Now, this is the governance structure. This is my last slide. The key is the governance structure. How do we make sure this approach can be operationalized and supported? So at the federal level, there is a steering committee led by the Minister of Agriculture and co-led by the major donor of this program. In that case, it was either the Dutch ambassador in Ethiopia or the Danish ambassador in Ethiopia. So they've been led by both the minister and the development partners. There was a technical committee supporting the steering committee. And at the regional level, there are regional transformation council chaired by the regional presidents and then deputized by the Bureau of Agriculture. So if you go down further in the districts, you find the value chain alliances where the farmers, the input suppliers, the financiers, the aggregators come together every quarter, chaired by the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Institute. So that's how the system has been structured, and it's going on so far based on this model. Thank you so much. Let me stop.
Thank you so much. As you can vacate these places to join the normal seat with a very good round of applause to our presenters. Let me try to recall the question of today. How do we get $100 billion Kampala target, forging inclusive partnerships, for investment, financing, and evaluation development. From our keynote speaker, Ode, he said doesn't have an answer. Then I gave a second try to call the presenters. Chola, from my colleague from NEPAD, talked about the theory of a commodity compact. Then he taught us to retain returns and risks. Then we went to practical case studies, Tanzania, Malawi, Ethiopia, talking about good things, clustering, aggregations, governance. But I'm becoming a terrible student. I didn't get an answer to my question. How do we get, I didn't know if after clustering they got how much and how their lives have been impacted, how they change smallholder farmers into large-scale farmers, how much they get with this clustering. So I still need to figure out how do we get $100 billion for CAADP implementation. Let me give now another third try. Because I'm getting bad, I need to hear more answers. I'm getting very bad student. So let me now call another group of experts to see if we can get more insights. Because we need to, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who is confused, but I'm still confused. I still need to know how do we get $100 billion to implement this in Kampala. We have now a theory. There's some bit going to do. Let's see. Mr. Austin Bolliton, Director Strategic Partnerships, Yara International. Welcome. Maybe now we have to get something. Now let me bring people who have invested. Maybe they will tell us how to do that. Mr. Maybe this is a president. Ibrahima Koulibaly. A very now approach with the president. This is the president of Pan-African Farmers Organization. I think today you have to get out of this box. We need to unpack these things and tell us what we need to do. Marie-Claire Wineza. I will have a mic. She's in the room. Oh, she's there. This is agribusiness manager for Equity Bank. You see, now we are coming to something tangible. Equity Bank. Round of applause. Me, I need $100 billion. How do you get it? So now we bring something important. Jonathan said. Jonathan is the vice president, technical expertise, AGRA. He has a very hands-on. Round of applause to Jonathan. I think he has to tell us also how do we forge the partnership. So we have Pardon Njerere. Now let's bring some ingredient. Chief economist, Komesa. Now let's see how the region. Now we need more in. I need more answers because until now, I've been a teacher. I'm not satisfied yet. Last but not least, Kofi Amegbeto, Senior Policy Officer and Delivery Manager, FAO Africa. A very round of applause. So we're going to start from international, national, and let's see. Do we have all our 6 panelists? Thank you. You are welcome. Maybe I can take that one since now it's empty. Good morning, once again, distinguished panelists. As I said, I need quick answers, so everybody will speak about 2 minutes because I think it's to finalize what the team has started because we need to get $100 billion to implement Kampala. Not only 100, even beyond, because we have a lot to do. These are 900 people who are hungry. We can't keep doing business as usual. Now, I start by Mr. Bolliton. You are the Director of Strategic Partnerships. Maybe you know how to manage partnerships. I want to be just simple. I think to get these $100 billion, I think we need some partnerships. You work at TLI. Maybe you tell us what Yara is. I don't know, my fertilizers, yes, but you are also invested. But what does this $100 billion mean to you, or in the lenses of Yara? And also you tell us you are the boss of partnerships in your big organization. So what do you think are the partnerships we need to get these $100 billion to implement CAADP in the most innovative ways?
2 minutes is not a very long time. I think Timothy Robertson kind of pointed to part of the solution, and that is to find new ways of working together. First time I heard about CAADP, I was an embassy bureaucrat in Malawi and struggling with a very disconnected, fragmented development partner community, and sitting there listening to the coordinators of agriculture in Malawi. I said to the rest of my development partner community, give these people a break. It was a very fragmented community. Soon after, I got a visit at the embassy from Professor Richard Kandavire, and he was coming to Malawi presenting CAADP. This is back in 2005. It could have been 20 years this day. And what CAADP did at that time was at least consolidating and bringing a very fragmented community together. And we brought this CAADP effort into a pretty good aligned process of development partners supporting an overall strategy of Malawi. I think 20 years down the line, I mean, not a lot has radically changed agriculture in Malawi, but the point is it brought us together. I think to succeed in this very complex, multiple challenging world now, and I hear your voice, Africa needs to figure out this themselves. But I think both parties needs to be a bit humble. I'm all for African kind of leadership and governance, but I think it's also, fair to point to the fact that not all governments are, really on the top of good governance. I think this CAADP Kampala process, if we figure out how to operationalize what has previously been described here as commodity compacts, that may be the new way of supporting a different type of engagement. And I think this hang-up to figure out how private sector can, or how government can attract private sector investment to government plans. Maybe we need to change the logic a bit and ask, how can public investments be aligned and, brought together with private opportunities? I think, to me, this commodity compact is not sort of intuitively straightforward. But if Africa is going to grow, as everyone is saying it will grow, not only population-wise, but also economy-wise, they cannot continue to rely on other countries' production of food and import it. If we could start now rally behind, and it has been exemplified here with rice in Tanzania. And if we start unpacking the challenges and complexity of the rice commodity, and we look at the whole value chain, from my side, it starts also with inefficiencies at the port. Government needs to focus on what government should focus on, and that's creating an enabling, constructive environment for investors to see opportunities. Inefficiency at the port, distribution, retail, engagement with farming communities, targeting the geographies. We know that there may be some challenging soil health issues. So this is also an opportunity not only to domesticate the CAADP, it could be an opportunity to triangulate and domesticate both CAADP, Kampala, as well as what was agreed in Nairobi last year, and the soil health agenda. So you start unpacking the complexities, and then you will identify the policy bottlenecks, what some people call binding constraints, red tape, bureaucracy, inefficiencies. So the policy is responding more to what the private kind of economy is driving forward. Having said all this, back to what Odd said, if this is not leading to farmer-level impact, that will be the ultimate measure for success. We need to be farmer-centric, industry kind of responsive, and find a way of a new mix of engagement. You know, listening to all the people, good people here yesterday, I still feel it's predominantly development partners talking to governments. I mean, I'm privileged and honored to be here, speaking on behalf of one particular piece of the puzzle, which is the fertilizer industry, but the engagement dynamics needs to change. And if we follow this path and we start building trust amongst, you know, a bigger mix of people and communities and industries, maybe we will succeed, and maybe we will even do better than $100 billion to agriculture in Africa.
Thank you.
Sorry
so
for taking
much.
time.
Yeah, sure, but it's very important. Thank you so much. Rounds of applause to our Yara expert. Yeah, I think one thing we need to change. We change the way we engage. We change the way we prepare. I think you've adopted the trawler's commodity approach. So we change the way we organize ourselves before we approach partners for money or something else. So, and also take care of us. So it's very important. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the president is about to speak. But before I call upon President Coulibaly on Powerful, I would like to inform you that the coffee is served. You are allowed to go and grab a cup of coffee and come back, because we don't want to break, we want to start, because we want to hear to some important thing. You are allowed to do the same two things at the same time. Go grab coffee, come back, then we continue the discussion. Mr. Coulibaly, you are the president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization. You are the president, you are a big man, but people you represent, millions, farmers, 80%, I don't know the number, but they are smallholder farmers. And once they are smallholder farmers, most of them even poor. And not only poor, but also most of them living in rural areas. You know, poverty in Africa is mostly rural. And they concentrate in most smallholder farmers. These are the community you are representing. But we have a problem. How can these people be helped? How can we, what mechanism do you think can be deployed to the risk smallholder farmers attract financing?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur, pour cette question extrêmement importante. Je vais parler en français. I will speak in French. Please, mon anglais n'est pas très bon. My English is not very good. Donc, je vais parler en français.
Sans problème.
Et c'est une question cruciale. Et moi, j'aimerais vraiment que, pour la première fois, on arrête de focaliser toutes nos énergies sur cette question des petits producteurs. Parce que pour moi, c'est un terme très péjoratif, négatif et destructeur. Et vous savez, on a comme l'impression que les paysans ont choisi d'être petits et pauvres en Afrique. Mais je pense que la seule question qu'on doit poser, qu'est-ce qu'on a fait pour que les paysans puissent grandir et sortir de leur situation? Qu'est-ce que l'Afrique a fait? Je vais vous dire, je vais faire des accusations ici contre l'élite politique africaine. Parce que la situation, on est arrivé à un point où si on ne réussit pas, l'Afrique va disparaître. Moi, je suis convaincu. On ne peut plus échouer. Vous savez, dans la plupart de nos États, 80% de la richesse nationale, le budget est consommé dans la capitale. 80%. Ça, on ne le dit pas. Si vous voyez un périmètre maraîcher dans un village, pour les femmes, c'est que c'est une ONG qui l'a fait. Ce n'est pas le gouvernement. Si vous voyez un château d'eau dans un village, c'est que c'est une ONG qui l'a fait, pas le gouvernement. On n'investit pas dans les territoires. Et comment voulez-vous? Et pourtant, j'ai dit, il y a un braquage de la plus-value agricole. Je vais vous expliquer. Vous savez, l'Afrique est un continent où il y a énormément de réussites agricoles, mais c'est dans l'exportation, les cultures d'exportation. Vous savez, nous avons en Afrique le premier producteur de cacao, mais qui ne produit pas une barre de chocolat. Nous avons les premiers producteurs de coton, de cajou, de toutes les cultures d'exportation existent en Afrique. Et c'est produit par ces petits producteurs qu'on continue à dire petits et pauvres. C'est eux qui produisent le cacao en Côte d'Ivoire. Ce sont les petits producteurs, ce n'est pas les grosses exploitations. L'arachide du Sénégal, ce sont les petits exploitants qui le produisent. Mais qu'est-ce qu'ils reçoivent de la plus-value? Zéro. L'argent part pour construire la capitale. Donc, je pense qu'il y a une justice à restaurer d'abord. Et je vais vous dire, je vais répondre à votre question sur les 100 milliards. Vous savez, 100 milliards pour moi, ça manque d'ambition. 100 milliards pour moi, ça manque d'ambition. Parce que vous savez, 100 milliards, ce n'est rien pour un pays, un continent comme l'Afrique. 100 milliards de dollars, c'est rien. Pour moi, on peut avoir 100 milliards de dollars demain si les États africains acceptaient de prendre même 10% sur la plus-value de ces cultures d'exportation et de les réinjecter comme investissement dans l'agriculture. Ça, c'est une proposition concrète qu'on peut faire demain. Mais il y a l'argent en Afrique. Les banques sont surliquides en Afrique. Mais pourquoi les banques n'investissent pas dans l'agriculture? Parce que, justement, il n'y a pas de fonds de garantie. Les banques, c'est l'épargne de tout le monde. On ne peut pas jouer avec ça. Demain, on peut... L'accès au crédit en Afrique, c'est seulement 6% des agriculteurs africains ont accès au crédit. 6%. Mais comment voulez-vous qu'on nourrisse notre population avec ça? Ce n'est pas possible. Et donc, si on veut régler les problèmes, on a toutes les solutions à notre portée, mais on n'agit pas. C'est-à-dire, on attend toujours que les autres viennent régler notre problème. On attend que le bailleur de fonds extérieurs vienne investir en Afrique. Non, personne ne viendra. Il faut que nous-mêmes, on montre notre détermination à sortir notre continent de sa situation. Et avec nos ressources, on peut le faire. J'ai dit encore une fois, il y a de la richesse en Afrique. On peut mobiliser notamment nos banques qui sont surliquides. On peut prendre de la ponction sur les filières, les grandes filières d'exportation agricole. On peut prendre sur les mines, on peut prendre sur la téléphonie. Donc pourquoi on ne fait pas des choses simples comme ça pour commencer à financer notre agriculture? Mais on attend toujours. On parle, on fait des centaines de réunions pour dire des choses qu'on a déjà dites. Je pense qu'il faut arrêter. Si on veut réussir CAADP, vraiment cette fois-ci, on peut être sérieux. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Marie-Claire, le Président parlait, tu as bien compris. Hein? Je ne vais pas aller à côté de là. So, the question from the President is clear. Monsieur le Président, malheureusement, je suis en accord avec toi. Je suis d'accord avec toi. Mais, Marie-Claire a une réponse peut-être. Marie-Claire, you are from Equity Bank. And the question for the President is, why banks are not lending? The President was generous to say 6%. It's less than 5% actually. So what's going on? Maybe you can tell us, what are you doing in Equity Bank and how are you ready to solve? Because I'm also not believing in smallholder farmers feeding Africa. How do you help them growing? So is Equity Bank doing something to bring in these smallholder farmers even to tangible agribusiness? What are your experience and your involvement into that?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. My name is Marie-Claire. I'm working at Equity Bank, Rwanda. But in Equity Bank, we define agriculture not only as a means of food system, but also a foundation of African resilience and industrial transformation. And with our strategy, African Resilience and Recovery and Resilience Plan, that was our model for transformation, was mentioned to it's a private sector-driven framework outlined to catalyze how we can transform agribusiness or agriculture value chain into the continent. So our commitment in agriculture in Equity Bank currently, we are at 11.5% of our loan book dedicated to agriculture, but we have a commitment of reaching 30% of our loan book, allocating 30% of our loan book by 2030. This really shows us that when we commit ourselves in doing that, it's going to unlock the future of Africa. So in our strategy, how do we implement it? We focus in different sectors as agriculture, MSMEs, education, energy, and health. how we do to be able to unlock those sectors. For example, as I said, agriculture stays at the anchor of those pillars. How we do, we try to boost the productivity and access to market by supporting smallholder farmers, by giving them the financial literacy, because I see that there's one of the gap that we face all the time with farmers, and also by providing the concession loans, very, very specific in agriculture. And also we promote industrial commercialization, where we facilitate smallholder farmers or small exporters to graduated to agro-processors or value addition. Also, we support, we connect SMEs or smallholder farmers on regional and in the global markets. We also focus on how we can support climate-smart agriculture by empowering good farming, also by promoting youth and women in agriculture. To be able to unlock and to respond to the question that my colleague was said, I saw that, of course, we have issues of collateral, and also the uptake of our smallholder farmers stays somehow limited. But with our strategy, we try to develop on how we can work with development partners, DFIs, on how we can unlock the value chain by providing for them, for example, for them to give us the long-term loan, which can be facilitated the agricultural cycle, also by providing branded financing mechanism, where we think like having concession loans or guarantees that can unlock the sector, also by equipping our smallholder farmers, by giving them the trainings. Because one of the gaps that I find myself when I go around is that our farmers has to change their mindset. So when we keep them with also knowledge and skills, that can be one of the things which can really help us to unlock the system. So what I think as our strategy and the vision that CAADP commitment of mobilizing 100 million USD, it's, as I see, it's aligned perfectly with our vision, where I see that the private financing and the public capital and development align together in one same direction, where they can, when they have a same direction, I think it's going to be an opportunity to unlock those challenges that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I think this achieving 30% loan to agriculture by 2030, for me, it's too good to be true. But if it's true, a round of applause to Equity Bank. I think you will be the first to do the thing in the anti-award. So thank you so much. A round of applause to Equity Bank. They are doing great to come and lend to agriculture. Now let's move next to Jonathan. Jonathan, you are the Vice President, Technical Expertise. You know, this title is hiding a lot of things, because I think in the future we rely on expertise to do something. Now we have what the President has said, that you know, the government is not doing enough. You know, you have now an accusation. So we rely on your expertise to advise the government how government can play better to unlock the private finance. So now we rely on your expertise. What do you think is the best public investment? What do you think government can do to unlock public finance? Because now I know to unlock private finance, but when they come following something. So what kind of expertise can you give us on that perspective, Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ildefonso. I think to your question, first of all, around how we can raise 100 million, to me, that's not a problem. That's happened in the past, it will happen again. I mean, one company has already invested 100 million. That will happen. I think the issue is not about raising the money. And this comes to your specific question. The issue is more about how do we actually join things up and unlock the things that will actually move the needle on the key outcomes, the income for the farmers that Mr. Coulibaly, President Coulibaly was talking about, the reduction in post-harvest losses, the increase in yields, all of those things, right? There are tons of examples from around the world, from this continent, where this has happened. What we are not, so I can mention countries from Chile to Peru to Israel to Turkey to Vietnam. We know the answer. So I struggle when I hear people say, oh, we don't know what to do. We do know what to do. There's evidence from across the world. Look at economic history. It's full of examples from Netherlands to Jamaica, you name it. And on this continent, look at Morocco, look at Egypt, look at cashew in Cote d'Ivoire, which went from 9th in the world to #1 in the world in 20 years. Look at what Ethiopia did with flower industry from 0 in the 1990s to being bigger than Kenya and one of the biggest exporters of flowers in the world. Look at even Sierra Leone, for example, that had 0 production of onions, commercial, and now it's at 20% local production when it was 100% imports just 5 years ago. We have tangible examples and cases of what works to unlock financing into the right sector. So to your question, what's really missing for governments is basically that we support them with delivery and coordination structures. They will have their frameworks, their big documents, their NIPes, whatever. But at the end of the day, what matters is, do the progressives within government, the people that really want to drive things forward, and likewise the progressives within the private sector, because we also have private sector who are, let's be honest, happy with the status quo as well. But the progressives in the private sector that have business models that are inclusive, that are innovative, growing, employing the youth, etc. It's not about size, where they could be a one-woman business or a multi-million-dollar company. But are we able to get the two, the government and those private sector, to talk around specific bottlenecks that are holding back those value chains that have the potential to grow? And not just talk, but follow up with action on the 3 or 4 binding constraints that those specific value chains are facing. We have not, on the government side, supported governments. There are many people in governments that are brilliant and working really hard and trying, but we've not supported them with the delivery follow-up capability to fix those problems within a political cycle. It's not about, the political cycle is real, that's the key driver. And so you have to be able to work effectively within that period to show not just economic results, to fix that bridge or change that regulation or remove that tariff that is holding back the private sector, but also show those political results as well that are part of how the world works. And I think that's where we need to, so the advice to government is invest in those delivery coordination structures, which are in the guidelines, which I was very happy to see from NEPAD.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think this is very wise. Coordination is very important. The good news is that everybody is saying $100 billion is not something big. We kind of get it. Now it depends the way you organize it. This is very positive. Now, Mr. Pardon, you are most probably an economist on this panel, but I want you to hear the perspective of the Regs. You work for COMESA, and you are a chief agri-economist. So give us some, how are you coordinating, what are you think are the best coordinating mechanism at regional economic committee level, at COMESA level, to, you have a big market, I know, to just tap into this investment we need, the $100 billion. Now, because at the age you will be concerned by time, we want you to use the 2 minutes efficiently, you and the diagram.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Am I audible? Yes, thank you very much, moderator. And I think as we move from here, I think you are almost around 10 billion right now. Mm-hmm. I think this is something interesting. Yes, I think, let me begin by saying that I think the narrative that we need to focus on as we transition to the Kampala Declaration is to consolidate the regional value chains as a catalyst or as a trigger towards the $100 billion mark set by the Kampala Declaration. And I think as a REC, I think we play a very important role to ensure that member states are well coordinated. And I want to give you a specific efforts and examples that we are doing as COMESA and other RECs in doing that. So number one, I think the issue of policy is quite key. I think this is one key element that actually drives investment in member states or in the region. And I think issues of harmonization is quite important. I think this is the sweet news that investors want to hear. And I think what I want to allude that COMESA already, we have started the process and we have what we call the COMESA Common Investment Area Agreement, which tries to consolidate or to harmonize investment policies within the COMESA region and ensure that we are one destination for investment. I think that is one critical area that we are focusing on. The second one is regional investment promotion. I think this is quite key. We need to move as a one person, as a one region, not as individuals. So what we are doing right now is we have started our first regional investment forum that we did in Tunisia last year. So this one we're bringing in member states to showcase their investments to potential investors. And this way, I think we are setting the goal is one direction as a region. The next one that we are doing also is to utilize the digital platforms. So we have a digital investment platform that we have already established as COMESA. So this digital investment
l'idée de donner des directives ou ceci ou cela. Je crois que les États doivent mettre en place directement des systèmes de coordination ou des plateformes qui regrouperaient les gouvernements, le secteur privé et les agriculteurs, c'est-à-dire les coopératives d'agriculteurs. Ça, c'est un point. Ceci garantirait, par exemple, pour les investisseurs, ce sont des plateformes intergouvernementales qui garantiraient les investissements extérieurs. Ce type de plateforme aussi nous permettrait de contrôler, par exemple. Nous ne pouvons pas laisser le secteur privé investir ou tout seul, de contrôler le secteur privé et le type de culture que le secteur privé introduit dans la culture des pays africains. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Il faut qu'on aille à l'action. Ce que vous dites, il faut, avec le secteur privé, we need to work together, governments, private sector, and to make sure we move forward without more talks. I think what his man from Djibouti is saying. Gentlemen?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Ifeanyi Ofodu Raymond from Nigeria. So I'm a reform leader for Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which is chaired by the Vice President. And the private sector is our major focus, and that is why I'm particularly interested in this. So I think while we're trying to enable businesses to be able to thrive in Nigeria is because of cases like this. Because when businesses are enabled, when regulatories are not the problem, when bottlenecks are removed, then businesses can be able to ensure that their finances are accessible, are unlocked. For example, in Nigeria, we're able to clear the aviation funds and all this. So I think these are also part of the ways that government in their countries can ensure there are no bottlenecks that are hindering private sectors in imputing to the system, especially nutrition and agriculture. And also, as a Youth for Nutrition champion, we are trying to see how startups, youths that are starting up in the private sector system can have every single tool they need to be able to excel and harness to the full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Pass to the lady with the hands-on on primary production.
Thank you so much. Good morning again. My name is Balkis. I'm a farmer from Nigeria. And I want to echo what the first speaker said, that we need to look internally. We have the resources in Africa. We just need governments to take this more serious. We have a lot of revenue that governments are generating in each of the African countries. Can they pick from this revenue to commit to the $100 billion fund? We don't want to go to the West to start looking for $100 billion. We have more than $100 billion in Africa. So we need to look internally. I think this conversation should be, the government should be the ones sitting on that podium, talking about how they can commit to raising the $100 billion funds and more, because they have it. Our government have it. He spoke from Nigeria. I'm going to say this. We are over 200 million population in Nigeria, and we are the most populated in the African continent. So you can imagine the tax, the revenue that is being generated from that country. We look at other African countries, South Africa, Rwanda, Kenya. These large countries are generating massive revenue. So can we get some shares of their revenue to fund CAADP implementation? Thank you.
Indeed, to supplement you, lady, I think we have this money because our import bill of food is $100 billion. So we already have more than that. So you have a good point. I think what you need is a mindset. I want to give a chance to our panelists. Now, I want to turn into advisors. 30-second advice. I will start from the other side. 30-second advice. What do you have in your mind? You advise government, but we are not here government only. They are government. They are us, international organizations. They are us, private sector. They are us, all of us farmers. We are all sitting here, parliamentarians. We are executive, legislative, so we are all here. And I think some will even follow us through the old channels, the social media and the others, they will maybe be able to follow what you have been saying here. Now, I want to turn into 30-second advisor. Anything you have forgotten, anything you think is relevant, to be more efficient, to get easy money, not from even outside, from within, to regroup ourselves. You mentioned a very good ideas, but now something that you think you missed, that can be a game changer. Let's your final message. Kofi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I totally agree with the lady. We have resources, public resources, but also we have a very strong domestic private sector.
10 seconds.
Yes, one key advice I would tell government to do is to scale up the de-risking mechanism so that the domestic private sector could easily or see investment opportunities as viable and come into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. De-risking. Pardon.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, thank you, moderator. I think for me, I urge governments to make favorable policies, favorable investment environment. I think this is critical. There is more incremental benefits from having a good policy than a bad policy. So I feel let's focus on having those policies right for investors to come through. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good policies to attract investment. Jonathan?
I will point to one specific policy, and that is industrial policy. And I want to make sure people don't misunderstand this, because many people tend to. Industrial policy is the policy to coordinate all other policies around the needs of the growth-oriented private sector, including our friend from Nigeria there. So it's because the different policies, energy policy, tax policy, land policy, are scattered in different parts of government. They're moving in different directions. You need a policy to coordinate them around the needs of the private sector. Otherwise, the Ministry of Finance will come and tell you, why am I putting money into CAADP? I can't see any results. So we need to get that industrial policy right. Green, of course, sustainable green. Agro-industrial policy is the key one.
Industrial policy to make sure we have appropriate investment to convince the Minister of Finance. Let's come to the other side. Mr. Boletin. Botilen, yeah.
I was called, in Vietnam, I was called Mr. Bulletin for many years.
How do you pronounce your first name?
Øystein. But no worries, I'm used to all kinds of pronunciations.
Apologies.
You know, my kind of humble appeal would be, I mean, recognizing that, you know, past efforts, past recipes, and past instruments needs to be reshuffled a bit. And if we could rally behind, let's say, domestication from below, and not have a pre-scripted kind of manuscript and then you present it to private sector, but dare to have inclusive consultations now at a cluster level, targets on key commodities, involve the farmers, the regional governments, and private sector with a keen stated objective to deliver difference on the ground. And also have, you know, pretty serious commitment from government, not this superficial endorsement like you tend to see in a typical, you know, development partner government interface. It hasn't taken us anywhere, you know, close to where we need to be. So, you know, let's test out and maybe be bold to, you know, state this as one way of domestication. You know, find a couple of countries with serious commitment, come back next year and report on progress, including whether this is actually making a difference on the ground, also when it comes to capital being invested. That would be my humble appeal. Definitely. And on behalf of Yara, I can commit, you know, our capacity and willingness to invest in engagement and support, at least in 2 particular countries. It was already mentioned that Tanzania is far ahead of the rest of the gang when it comes to operationalize it. It was a lot of good learning, I think, from the Ethiopian example also. Let's come together, you know, start building a bit more trust in private sector. You know, we are not there as bandits trying to rip off people from, you know, resources, but this co-creation, a new type of co-creation is needed.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Marie-Claire?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. what I see is just to create a joint platform on agriculture financing, but based on 3 anchors, like lesson sharing and research, and the risking mechanism or instruments, and also monitoring and evaluation. Thank you.
Absolutely. We need evidence to also carry out this huge responsibility and, of course, accountable commitment. We need to commit something and then we come to be held accountable as government. Not, yeah, I agree with you. Superficial commitments don't help. Mr. President, your final recommendation.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que depuis 3 jours, tout le monde est unanime qu'on peut réussir cette fois-ci. Il y a on sent une sorte de volonté, en tout cas dans cette salle et puis dans tout le processus de Kampala, on sent que les gens veulent que ça change. On a beaucoup parlé de redevabilité, mais je pense que personne n'a donné le contenu de la redevabilité. Ça va être quoi, la redevabilité pour Kampala? Donc pour moi, c'est ça. Et donc nous, en tant que mouvement paysan, modestement, moi je ne vais pas dire ce qu'il faut. On a déjà dit au gouvernement ce qu'il faut faire, mais ils ne le font pas. Donc nous, on est en train d'élaborer un instrument qu'on appelle le Kampalamètre. C'est-à-dire, nous, on va créer nos propres critères de redevabilité et de gouvernance qui sont universels. C'est-à-dire, la bonne gouvernance, les principes sont universels. Donc, les États qui ne le font pas, on va les dénoncer publiquement. C'est-à-dire, nous n'avons pas d'autre option. Voilà. Donc, nous, on va travailler et tous ceux qui veulent nous soutenir dans ça, tous ceux qui veulent la réussite, nous sommes ouverts à collaborer avec tous ceux qui veulent collaborer avec nous en tant que mouvement paysan africain pour que cette fois-ci, dans 10 ans, on ne vienne pas dire on va aller à Abidjan ou bien à Dakar pour faire une nouvelle déclaration pour dire que ça n'a pas marché. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. I'm sure, Mr. President, I think we can't do it without you. I think with this, I thank you so much for giving us this floor. I think we have achieved the end of this presentation and the panel. I think we have had some hints. How do we get $100 billion? It's possible. Mindset change, being accountable, follow the advice of farmers, not consider them as small, but people with the potential can grow. Embrace lending from banks, I think community from the bank, research, investing in good governance and coordination, capacity building, investment, mobilization, and one commodity per country, specialized. This commodity approach now is validated. Let's go and do that. Thank you and have a nice day.
Can we give Dr. Ildefonse a very big round of applause for moderating this session in the morning? And can we give our panelists a round of applause as well? So we are now going to break out and go for our parallel sessions, but I want to ask the technical team at the back to show us the sessions. We have sent you emails to show you where the sessions are taking place, but we want to show this on the screen. Can we have it on the screen? So that people know where to find themselves. We will go for our parallel sessions. Then from our parallel sessions, we'll go for our lunch break. After our lunch break, we'll go back to our sessions. We will come back here in this room at 3 p.m. for our closing plenary session. From 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. we will be here. We will also have the official closing and networking session in the late afternoon. So if we can see the screen, everyone can know where they will be going, which room they will be going to for their sessions. And from the sessions, we'll go for our lunch. I'd like to ask if you were using headsets, if you could leave them on the table. We'll come back here, find them here. And if you need any help, we have the ushers who are in the light green t-shirts. They'll assist for any other assistance that you might need.
All right, thank you so much. We will see you later in the afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.